Bruiser, Chapter 34, Trajectory. Narrator Tennyson. Once in a while, Dad and I go out to shoot some hoops. He does this because basketball is the only sport where he still has a fighting chance against me, since he still has a height advantage. Early on Sunday morning, I go over to Bru's place and invite him to join us. It's my way of apologizing because the actual words, "I'm sorry," don't come easy to me. Unless, of course, I'm saying it to Bronte. It seems I'm always apologizing to her. We're on his porch because Uncle Hoyt is sleeping after a hard night flattening asphalt. Cody's out in their ugly acre trying to fly a cheap cellophane kite, but the weeds are too tall and he can't get up enough momentum when he runs. Consider it the next phase of our workouts, I tell Bru. Basketball builds agility. You can't get that with free weights. Aren't you worried you'll skin your elbows and make me bleed? To which I respond, are you calling me a klutz? It then occurs to me for the first time why he seemed so exhausted after our weightlifting sessions and why I didn't. I start to feel ticked off that he never said anything, but I let it go because anger is not our friend. Thanks for the invitation, Brewster says, but I can't. My uncle likes weekends to be family time, which is ridiculous considering the man has a night job and sleeps all day. It's easier for everyone if I just stay home. Easier doesn't make it right, I point out, and then I hear a voice from behind me. Tell Uncle Hoyt you won't like him no more. I turn to see Cody standing there holding that sorry little kite. It's a typical thing for a little kid to say, but Bruce seems to be struck by the words, like they contain divine wisdom. I have no idea why a man like Uncle Hoyt would care what Bru thought of him. Bru reaches to a Band-Aid on his forearm. I wonder what kind of wound it conceals. He rubs the wound, mulling over what Cody said. Then he turns to me. Which park will you be at? I don't know exactly what Bruce says to Uncle Hoyt, but the result is that both Brewster and Cody show up at the park. My dad and I are feeling pretty down, although we try not to show it. Mom wasn't home when we left. I suspect she's probably off with her boyfriend, the Muppet. I have no idea whether she's in the process of breaking it off, making it stick, or just escaping from everything. I don't think Dad knows either. A cloud of gloom follows us to the court, but when Bru arrives, it seems to dissipate. Maybe because there's someone else to focus on. Cody immediately escapes from the court, having no use whatsoever for basketball. He's much more engaged by a malfunctioning sprinkler head in the grass. It's immediately clear to Dad and me that Bru's experience in basketball is limited to the wonderful world of phys ed. He can dribble standing still, and he has just the right trajectory on his foul shots to sink some of them, but he lacks any real-world game. Didn't you ever shoot around with your uncle? Dad asks, completely oblivious to the Uncle Hoyt situation. My uncle is more of a baseball kind of guy. And that's all my dad needs to hear. Bru is hoop impoverished. Suddenly my dad's in his element, and for the first time in years, the teacher in him has a blank athletic slate, a new subject to whom he can impart all the family basketball moves. You know, I played in college, Dad brags, doing some globetrotter stuff that was only impressive the first 100 times, but Bru's eating it up. Even Cody looks up from his irrigation project as Dad deftly handles the ball. I suppress the urge to roll my eyes, hoping that someday my own children will return the favor. Stick with me, Dad says, and you'll own the court in no time. It feels good to see my father in this altered state, actually enjoying himself with no thoughts of Mom and the nest of termites that's eating away at the foundation of our family. In fact, none of that seems to bother me either. It all feels far, far away. Bru, with that photographic memory of his, is a quick study. By the time we're done for the day, he's got himself a respectable layup and can guard without fouling. Thank you, Mr. Sternberger. His gratitude is genuine. Not a problem, Brewster. Call me Brew. It feels good to be out here and away from all the frustrations of life. In fact, the entire day feels abnormally good in a way I can't quite describe. It's that quirky kind of weekend feeling they write ridiculous sunny day songs about. You know the ones. I'm sure they're on your iPod, even though you'd never admit it. As for my father, he's more up than I've seen him in weeks. An hour on the court puts things into perspective, Dad says as he hands the ball to Brew for a final shot. I have a feeling things are just going to get better. It turns out he's right, and at the same time, very, very wrong. Bruiser, Chapter 35, Stuff. Narrator Cody. Uncle Hoyt had a bad day the next week. He hadn't had a real bad day for a while. Sure, he was always grumpy, but grumpy wasn't foul. There were times when he was actually nice, like the night Tri-Tip had died and he read me Goodnight Moon and a bunch of other little kid books and actually even kissed me goodnight. Don't you worry about Tri-Tip, he'd told me. He's gone to a better place. Well, since I heard a chainsaw going for 2 whole hours, I knew that the better place didn't take a dead bull whole, but I guess he must have meant cow heaven. That was a side of our uncle we didn't see all that often, but it was good to see it when we did. Those are the times I always try to hold on to when he goes foul, like he did when the steamroller hit a car. I wasn't there when it happened, since he's not allowed to ever take me to work, even on Take Your Kid to Work Day, 'cause the work is dangerous and he usually does it at night. I found out the next day when I got home from school. It was Thursday, and Brew was out with Bronte at the mall. I wanted to go, but Brew said I wasn't invited this time. He wasn't even making up stories for Uncle Hoyt anymore. Not since last Sunday, when he'd played basketball with Tennyson and his father. Things changed a little bit on that day. See, Uncle Hoyt wasn't going to let us go anywhere that morning, but Bruce said he was going to go out anyway. Where are you going? Who you going to be with? Uncle Hoyt had asked. But all Bruce said was, none of your business and none of your business. I expected Uncle Hoyt to start yelling, but he just said, careful there, Brew. I couldn't tell whether he meant to be careful out there or be careful of him. Then Brew showed him the cigarette burn and said, one of these days you're going to test me, and there'll be no one getting hurt but you. Is that a threat, boy? No, just the truth. I don't know how I could go on caring about someone who won't even let me have my own life. Even though it was my idea for Brew to tell Uncle Hoyt he wouldn't like him no more, I never thought it would be such a big deal. Before it could get any worse, I shouted out, a basketball. Brew and me are just going to the park for some basketball. Uncle Hoyt nodded, but kept his eyes stuck on Brew. Fine then, he said, but his voice didn't say it was fine at all. You want what's out there? You go grab it, boy. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Ever since then, things haven't been right between them. They don't fight, but they don't talk much either. And when they're in the same room, I feel like I don't want to be there. So anyway, it's Thursday night and it's getting dark, and I come inside from trying to fly that stupid kite again. But now it's got so many holes, the wind couldn't pick it up even if it wanted to, 'cause it would just blow through the holes. Once I'm inside, I can hear Uncle Hoyt all worked up on the phone. He's pacing the kitchen, shouting about an accident he had the night before, explaining how it wasn't his fault. A car veered over the cones and hit his steamroller, not the other way around. But I guess that doesn't matter. Someone has to get blamed. From what I can hear, a person is in the hospital. Stable condition, which I guess is better than dead. I did believe Uncle Hoyt when he said he didn't do nothing wrong. because if there's one thing he's proud of, it's the way he drives that steamroller. He drives it like there's no one else in the world can do it as good as him. So I'm standing in the living room listening to him on the phone, but he's already been drinking and he's slurring his words. I don't think that helps things. From what Uncle Hoyt yells into the phone, I know that his boss has taken him off the roller and has given him the lowest job in road construction. Pushing tar, he says. I've been at this for years and you're making me push tar? I heard some yelling on the other end of the phone, and then Uncle Hoyt says, "Fine, then I won't come in at all." When Uncle Hoyt hangs up, he doesn't just hang up. He hurls the phone at the refrigerator, and it shatters into a gazillion pieces. That's when he notices me standing there watching him. "What are you doing?" he says. "Go do your homework." "I got none," I tell him. "Then just get out of my sight." "You gonna get fired, Uncle Hoyt?" "Get out of here." I don't need another invitation. I go to my room while Uncle Hoyt keeps on drinking. All the while I keep looking out of my window at the empty field and the fence and the houses beyond that, looking for Brew, hoping he'll get home soon. I know he's still out with Bronte. There's no telling when he'll get back. And I get to thinking that part of Uncle Hoyt's bad mood is my fault, because I told Brew to say he wouldn't like him no more. If I hadn't done that, Brew would be home now instead of off with Bronte. And if he was home, maybe Uncle Hoyt might not be so mad. Right around sunset, the time Uncle Hoyt would usually be leaving for work, he goes out onto the porch instead. I can hear the squeak of the folding chair as he sits down and starts talking. He's talking to nobody, having conversations with himself. All the things he wishes he could say to his boss and everyone else, but doesn't have the guts to actually say. He's still chewing out his boss to the crickets when I get up to go to the bathroom. I should have known what would happen next, and if I had been thinking ahead, I could have stopped it. See, he's outside and I'm inside. And just last week our screen door handle busted. You can push it open from the inside, but once you're outside, you can scratch and paw at that door all you want. It's near impossible to open, and totally impossible if you're drunk. "Cody," I hear him call, but I'm still in the bathroom taking care of business. "Cody," he calls again, "open the stupid door." And I'm hurrying as fast as I can to get off the pot, but there's only so fast you can do such a thing. By the time I'm out of the bathroom, he's screaming bloody murder. And when I get out into the living room, I can see him through that screen. His eyes. I know those eyes. Uncle Hoyt's gone foul, and Brew is nowhere to be seen, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just stand there staring at him, afraid to open that door, knowing it's only going to make it worse. But still I just stand there anyway, watching those eyes get fouler and fouler as he screams, "Open this GD door." Finally he punches his fist through the screen and reaches inside, pulling the door open. Now there's nothing between him and me. I start backing up. I think that maybe I can run out the back door, but Uncle Hoyt's fast for a drunken man. Before I can make a move, he's there. He grabs at me, missing mostly, but catching enough of my shirt to get me off balance. I fall, hitting the edge of the TV, and I know that Brew isn't anywhere close because it hurts. "You think that was funny, huh?" he growls, letting me stand out there. "Had yourself a laugh, did ya?" He gets a good grip on me this time, and I think, ragdoll, ragdoll, be the ragdoll, just like Brew always tells me, but I can't do it because Brew isn't here. Uncle Hoyt tosses me, though, like I really am a ragdoll. I think maybe he's aiming for the sofa, but I miss and hit the table beside it, knocking over a lamp. The bulb blows out, and I wish I would have been more careful, because Uncle Hoyt's gonna blame me for that, just like his boss blames him for that car hitting his steamroller. You're useless, he shouts. You're useless. Because when he's drunk, Uncle Hoyt says lots of things twice. You and your brother both. He thinks he can go out there and do whatever he wants. If it wasn't for the two of you, I'd have a life. You both owe me. You owe me everything. And now I know this is my fault, because it's Brew he's mad at even more than me. But I'm the one who's here, and Brew's not, and it's all because of me. He moves closer. I can see his right hand clenching into a fist, and I know he's going to use it. So I reach for something, anything, and I find a glass ashtray on the table next to me, all square and heavy, and I throw it at Uncle Hoyt. I don't know what an ashtray is going to do to stop him. All I know is I gotta do something. It hits him on the forehead with a bonk that I can hear, and in a second there's blood on his forehead. The way he looks at me now makes me think that maybe I just ended my own life. Did you just throw that at me? He says, all amazed. Did you just throw that at me? And my mind is such a knot. I shake my head and say, no, sir. Like denying it might calm him down. But I know it won't do no good, because Uncle Hoyt had a bad day, and now my day is going to be even worse than his. I scramble away toward that screen door. I can push it open from the inside easy, but he grabs my foot and pulls me back before I get there. You are going to be sorry you did that, boy, he says. I am going to teach you to respect me. You hear me? You hear me? He reaches to pull his belt out of his pants, but his belt isn't there, and he knows if he goes to find it, I'll get free, so he doesn't let go. He picks me up, carrying me like a football. There's nothing I can do but kick and squirm. I'm going to teach you a lesson, both of you. 2 birds with 1 stone. He don't want to be here, he'll pay the consequences. In a second, we're outside, and I can see the screen door banging closed behind us, getting farther away. You'll learn to respect me. The way he's holding me, I can see where we've been, but not where we're going. But I know without having to see. It's the same place he always takes me when he goes foul. There's a shed way back at the edge of our property. It's the place farthest away from any other homes, so you can't hear much of what goes on in there. Not that our neighbors would care, not that our neighbors even know us. There's no way out of this, and I'm scared. More scared than I've ever been in my life. Not even when they told me about Mom dying and all, I wasn't this scared, because I didn't understand that then. I was too little. But this I understand. And although Uncle Hoyt has needed to teach me lessons before, he's never been this foul, and it never happens without Brew. Tonight it's going to be bad. Uncle Hoyt opens the door to the shed with his free hand and closes it behind him. Then he pulls a string dangling from up above, and a light comes on. The first things I see are all the tools on the wall. Hammers, screwdrivers, shovels. A wild part of me thinks that Uncle Hoyt might use them, but there's crazy and there's crazy, and Uncle Hoyt isn't crazy. He ain't no murderer, or if he is, he's an accidental one, because although I know he means to teach me proper respect, tonight he might teach it too well. Please, Uncle Hoyt, I beg, wait till morning. Lessons are best in the morning, right? You've got it coming, he says, staggering. You've got it coming now. I try to hide underneath the workbench. It's full of webs and bugs down there, but I don't care about those, not now. I squeeze all the way into the corner, but he reaches right in and grabs my leg and drags me out. I feel the concrete floor scraping my elbows. And as he pulls me, I bite his arm with all the force that I can, figuring it might sober him up. He curses and swings me a backhanded slap across my face. It's the first time he's actually hit me tonight, but it won't be the last, because I know the first one makes all the rest easier. My face stings and I'm crying now, which is bad because my eyes are all clouded and I can't see straight enough to move out of the way of his swinging hands. I think if I'm fast enough and he's drunk enough, I can dodge the worst of it, like in dodgeball. I never get hit in dodgeball, but I can't dodge nothing with blurry eyes. I never wanted you, Uncle Hoyt slurs. Neither of you. Neither of you. Hearing it would have hurt awful if I hadn't already said that 100 times, and if I didn't know that only a part of him means it anyway. It shouldn't never have been this way, he says as he grabs me again. But if it's got to be, then you've got to learn to treat me the way you would have treated your own father. I push out of his grip again and bounce against the wall. Tools fall around me, clattering to the ground. My back should hurt from hitting the wall so hard, but it doesn't. Not just that, but the stinging on my face from the slap is fading much faster than it should. And that's when I know. That's when I know he's there. Bruce come home to save me. I look up to the little window and I can see him there outside. Just a hint of his face in the darkness looking in on us. He doesn't kick down the door or nothing. He doesn't come in to stop Uncle Hoyt. He never does. He says he can't. But what he can't do don't matter. Just what he can do. And he's doing it now. But Uncle Hoyt doesn't know it yet. Get up, Uncle Hoyt says to me. But I don't. Instead, I do what I have to do. I become the rag doll, falling limp on the floor, pretending I got no bones, pretending I got no flesh, just stuffing sewed up in cloth. A second more and Uncle Hoyt knows Brew is there, because that little cut on his forehead where the ashtray hit him slowly zips itself closed. It don't happen as fast as it does for me, because Brew don't care about Uncle Hoyt as much as he cares about me. But he cares about him enough because that wound is gone. And Uncle Hoyt knows it because now his anger moves away from me to Brew, and Uncle Hoyt sees him in the window. Finally came back, did ya? Uncle Hoyt growls like a bear, if a bear could speak. Well, you're too late. Let the boy take his own due. But Bruce stands there, stone-faced, and won't say a word. Just as well. This is for both of you then. That's when Uncle Hoyt starts to use his fists, taking everything out of me, but it's nothing to me 'cause I'm the rag doll. I hear grunts from outside, not screams, because Brew, he's good at holding it all in, keeping it all to himself. I know how much it must hurt, and it just makes Uncle Hoyt angrier that I'm not getting his lesson. He screams and curses, wishing I was, but knowing I'm not. I close my eyes and stay limp, bouncing and flopping around the shed, letting him kick and hit and pull and tug. I even start smiling, like it's all just a whole lot of rocking in a crib. You can't hurt me, Uncle Hoyt, no matter how foul you get, because I've got Brew to protect me, and he'll never let you hurt me. Never, never, never. Bruiser, Chapter 36, Receiver. Narrator Brewster. I stayed out till dark, and my brother went home alone to face our worst nightmare. Now I stand at the shed window until my legs give out. My uncle is a weapon turned on my brother, now turned on me. Let the boy take his own due. But I won't allow it, and he knows it. Is it me my uncle beats? Is his foot so swift, or his hand so furious, because he knows it's coming to me? For being disloyal? For wanting more than this? Or is he furious at the futility, furious at knowing he will never teach us to respect him? The muddy ground, all fours. I roll to my side, ear in mud, knee to chest. I swallow my screams, force them into my stomach, digest the pain, dissolve it, then sweat it out, piss it out. Wetness spreading in my jeans, as foul as my uncle, who I should hate, but I can't, who I should stop, but I can't. This wiring inside me is all wrong. I'm built to receive. I can't kill an ant. I can't salt a snail. I can't raise a hand to my uncle. My wiring won't let me. So I lie in the mud, in my pain, in my weakness, in my fury at him is nothing compared to my fury at myself. I am the crumbling aftermath of the earthquake, the dust settling over the ruins. 3 minutes and it's over. I rise, battered but not broken, never broken. It will take more than my uncle to do that. I reach for the rusted knob, opening to find Cody. His hair a wild mess, eyes frightened and lost, but not a mark upon him. And Uncle Hoyt has crumbled too, ruined and rocking, a baying, keening ball of misery, kneeling in the center of the shed, gripping himself as if he's the one in pain. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, he wails. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Always the same. He means it too. He means it in the moment, but that doesn't change what he's done. To Cody, to me. I take my brother and close the door on Uncle Hoyt, escaping from the epicenter, because I can feel my uncle's pain like worms in my flesh. But if I can get far enough away, fast enough away, his agony will be his and his alone. Our bedroom is my sanctuary. I take off my shirt. I lie face down on my bed. We begin the ritual, Cody and I. We both know it well. A warm, wet cloth begins it. He mops it across my back, gently tracing reconnaissance of the wounds. Is there bleeding? No, Cody says. A little. He wipes my face around my swelling eyes, and in his eyes I see how bad it is. A second cloth, this one with alcohol, cold and stinging. I swallow this pain too. The next cloth is dry. Cody carefully blots. He assesses. He's strategic with Band-Aids, familiar with the shapes and sizes. You want a shirt? Not yet. He puts a towel across my back, maybe to keep me warm, maybe to hide the scars of battle. They should be mine. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. He nods and begins to cry, but it only lasts an instant, because before a single tear falls, his sorrow becomes mine. A heaviness in my heart, a salty sting in my eyes. I want to be sad, he says. Can't you let me feel sad? But I can't do that. I'm not wired that way. I dream of the morning and how it will unfold. Uncle Hoyt never remembers. It's very convenient. He'll grasp just enough to know he did something wrong, but not enough to take responsibility for it. Cody will avoid his eyes at breakfast, studying his alphabets like they're a spelling test. But I'll hold my uncle's gaze, making him look away, because this time was worse than all the others, and he'll know, and he'll have to remember. Let me see it, he'll say. He'll reach for my shirt, but I'll pull away. The wounds are my dignity. I will not share them. That's when he'll get scared. You won't tell no one, right? If you do, they'll ask questions. You'll have to give answers. They'll take you away. Then you and your brother, they'll split you both up. That's what they do. Is that what you want? so you don't gotta tell. 'Cause who would believe it, this thing you can do, and what happened last night won't happen again. See, I've learned my lesson. I'm making amends. We're a family here. It's nobody's business. A family, Brew. Let's keep it that way. I'm ready to face him when morning comes, ready for all those things he'll say. I rise with bold and righteous indignation. The wounds on my body an accusation. I'm ready. But Uncle Hoyt cannot be roused. His stupor extends into the day. His snores shake the house, and confronting a sleeping man is no confrontation at all. So I get Cody breakfast and gingerly slip my backpack over aching shoulders. Then we head off to school, both of us knowing that we won't tell a soul. Bruiser, Chapter 37, Phosphorescence. Narrator Bronte. The way I see it, the impossible happens all the time, but we're so good at taking it for granted, we forget it was once impossible. I mean, look at airplanes. Come on, how could they not be impossible? These gigantic metal things, you'd need a massive hydraulic winch just to get off the ground? Please. They used to say if man were meant to fly, he'd have wings. But it didn't stop poets from dreaming, did it? Then a few hundred years ago, a man named Bernoulli came up with an elegant mathematical principle about pressure, air density, and velocity. And bingo, poetry became poetry in motion, and now objects bigger than blue whales are filling the friendly skies. Thank you very much. I think small children are far more in tune with the wonder of it all, far better than the rest of us more sensible and mature folk. They look at every little thing, from fireflies to lightning, and stand in awe that such things exist. Sometimes we need to be reminded that that's how we should feel. But on the other hand, if we felt that way all the time, we'd just marvel at the fireworks and never get anything done. I will reluctantly admit that I am also a victim of species numbness. I too have taken the wondrous and have magically made it boring. Fireflies contain reactive phosphor. Lightning is just static. Yawn. I will also admit that Tennyson and I came to accept Brewster's mystical talent far too quickly. Even though I tried to hold on to the wonder, I couldn't. The fact that he could heal and steal the hurts of others became a commonplace fact. That was my first mistake, because once you stop marveling at that firefly you caught in a jar, it sits on a shelf with no one to let it out. Bruiser, Chapter 38, Cotillion. Narrator Bronte. Before Uncle Hoyt had his steamroller accident and Brew took on the worst beating of his life, I was busy enticing Brewster out of his shell. Tennyson had become his personal trainer, but my role was far more intimate, as well it should be. I was Brew's muse extraordinaire, determined to caress him into a meaningful social life. Having read various books on psychology, I thought I had Brew figured out. All he needed was a little encouragement. Of course, I couldn't have been more wrong, but I've never been very good at abandoning theories. You need to reinvent yourself, I announced to him at lunch one day, holding his hand across the table for everyone in the cafeteria to see. My current invention works just fine, he said. People stay away from me, I stay away from them. I shook my head. Not anymore. You, my sad poetic stud, are not a loser, and it's time you stopped acting like one. The days of you skulking around the school are over. He tried to eat, but I was holding his eating hand, so all he could do was clumsily stab at the food with a fork in his left fist. Maybe I like skulking. You'll like having friends more. But he didn't seem convinced, only concerned. Are you going to look me in the eye and tell me that you don't want friends? I gave him back his hand, but he didn't switch the fork, leaving his hand available for me to take again. I smiled, marveling at all the little things that mean so much, and wondered when I had become so cloyingly Hallmark. It's not that I don't want friends, he said. I just don't think it's a good idea. But good idea or not, I was going to make it happen. The next in a long line of Brewster-related missions. As I've said, I'm not the most popular girl in the school, but I'm not unpopular either. That makes me socially balanced, which means my friends are balanced too. And those are the types of people most likely to warm up to brew. I called over my friend Hannah Garcia because she can slide a turtle out of its shell without even knowing. Hannah, I said as she sat down with us, Brewster is under the delusion that he's socially inept. Brew threw up his hands. Bronte! Oh, don't get out the heart paddles, I told him. Then I turned back to Hannah. As I was saying, he's been conditioned by circumstance to believe he is not worthy. We need an independent assessment. Bronte, you're embarrassing me, he said. Hannah waved a hand. Get over it. Then she studied him honestly and objectively. Well, she said, first of all, he's tall. Secondly, he's cute. Third, he's your boyfriend, and you have excellent taste in friends. Thank you. So, concluded Hannah, he receives a 9 on the acceptability scale. Just a 9, I asked. If he was a 10, he'd be going out with me. Then she winked at him and strode away. Brew was completely red in the face, but he also had the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I took both of his hands across the table because all eating had stopped anyway. You know what I think, I told him? I think we need to go out one night with a bunch of my friends, introduce you to life as I know it, and have a fantastic time. Okay, sure, he said, still pink and as giddy as could be. I planned the event like it was a major gala, a one-man cotillion sans tuxedo. It was just a bunch of us going down to the mall for burgers after school on Thursday, but I made sure I invited just the right people, the ones who, like Hannah, would make Brew feel comfortable, even while making him feel uncomfortable. There were 6 of us all together, not too few, not too many. I can't stay long, he said when he arrived, which is what he always said when he went anywhere. I leaned forward and kissed him, then moved to whisper in his ear, pausing to steal a whiff of his coconut hair conditioner, which for some reason I couldn't quite fathom, drove me wild. Trust me, I told him, you won't want to leave. But that just got him worried. We all had a great time that night, and although Brew was mostly quiet, he was accepted in a way he'd never been before. Brew was embraced by my friends and was finally able to feel a part of a circle larger than just his immediate family. As I predicted, he stayed longer than he'd intended to. I like your friends, Brew told me as he left. I didn't think I would, but I like them. A lot. I went home thinking that I had accomplished something remarkable. He went home to find his uncle taking out a life's worth of frustrations on his brother. Bruiser, Chapter 39, Subterfuge. Narrator Bronte. Grandparents everywhere talk about how they walked 5 miles to school each day in the snow, barefoot and chased by wolves. But it's not like that anymore. Most everyone we know drives or gets driven. But Tennyson and I had recently taken to walking to school, even though it's almost a mile. The thing is, if we walked, we got out of the house earlier. If we walked, we didn't have to sit in a car with Mom and wonder whose awful cologne we were smelling. If we walked, we didn't have to sit in a car with Dad, who used to be talkative, but now had adopted a code of silence while driving. At least Tennyson and I talked to each other as we walked, even if it was only to argue. Dad seemed okay last weekend, Tennyson said as we made our way through a drizzly morning. It was Friday, the night after Brew's big night out with my friends and me, so I was still riding a good mood. When? I asked. We were playing basketball. Brew was there. I thought about it and wished I could have been there to see Dad being his old self and to see Brew play ball. His workouts with Tennyson have definitely been defining his body, and okay, I'll admit, I had a primal kind of desire to see those muscles in motion. Dad was like his old self, said Tennyson, but there was something about it. I didn't know where Tennyson was going with this, and I don't think he knew either because he never finished the thought. Up ahead, when we were just a couple of blocks from school, we saw a tall, lumbering form in a leather bomber jacket. He had on a sweatshirt underneath, and the hood was over his head, but I didn't have to see his face to know who it was. Brew, I called out. He turned to look, but just for a second. Then, instead of waiting for us, he picked up his pace. Look, he's running away from you, said Tennyson. I really like this guy. I ran to catch up with Brew, both annoyed and confused. For all those big strides, he wasn't moving very fast, and I caught up with him in about a block. I grabbed his arm, and he turned his shoulder away, so I tugged on him harder until I got a glimpse of his face beneath the hood. What I saw almost made me stumble into traffic. His lips were swollen, and he had smudges of makeup on his face, clearly trying to conceal a black eye. Well, what happened to you? He shrugged. I was having a catch with Cody and missed the ball. You're lying. He didn't deny it. So? Now I could see that it wasn't just his eye. It was also in the way he held himself, the way he walked, like there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. I wanted to hold him, but I was afraid holding him would hurt him too. Did your uncle do this to you? He stayed quiet for a second and looked toward the school. No, he said. And then he said, yes. He seemed even more surprised than me that the word yes had come out of his mouth. I could tell he had every intention of keeping it secret forever. Suddenly he became pale with very real terror, fear of me knowing. I wasn't really prepared for the truth either. I was more stunned by it than anything else. Across the street, a few kids laughed. They weren't laughing at us, but still it bothered me. How dare they laugh within 100 yards of this truth? What about Cody? I asked. Cody's fine. He's better than fine. You have to tell someone. I just told you. I mean someone important. Who? The principal? The police? Yes. By now, Tennyson had caught up with us and was just staring, stupefied. The bell rang at school, but I didn't care. Lateness was not a concern. If I tell anyone, then they'll take us away from my uncle, Bruce said, and things will get a whole lot worse. What could possibly be worse than being beaten within an inch of your life? He didn't answer me, not verbally, but there was an answer in his eyes that had such a high wind chill factor I actually shivered. I can handle it, he said. I've got it all worked out. In a few months I'll turn 16 and I can become an emancipated minor. I'll move out, take Cody with me, and Uncle Hoyt won't be able to stop me. That's assuming you're still alive. I'll be fine. But if we get taken away from my uncle now, Cody and I will get put into a home. We'll probably get split up. And in a place like that, there's no way I can hide what I can do. People will know. And once they know, again, a blast of those wind chill eyes. I wanted to argue with him to the ground on this one, but that icy gaze shut me down. Who knows, Bruce said. Maybe my uncle will change. Then Tennyson, who I totally forgot about, chimed in. Bullies don't change unless they want to, Tennyson said. Trust me, I know. We had to go to the authorities. We had to. This was a textbook case of abuse, and turning the man in was the right thing to do, no question. Except that this was Brewster Rollins. If this were anyone else but Brew, I'd have gone straight to the powers that be and ratted out his uncle in an instant. But all the rules of normalcy and right and wrong broke down around Brew. What do you do with a textbook case when no one's written the textbook? Suddenly, I flashed to something I learned in biology. There are some animals that die without explanation if you take them out of their familiar environment. Even if they came from a horrible, hostile environment, they still die. You have to trust me, Bruce said. Please. What could be worse than his uncle? Only Brewster knew the real answer to that. And even though it went against everything I knew to be right, I reluctantly entered into his conspiracy of silence. And I guess I wasn't the only one. You have to come up with a believable story, or the teachers will be all over you, Tennyson told him. If anyone asks about your eye, tell them that I beat you up for dating Bronte, and if I have to back it up, I will. I gaped at Tennyson, unable to believe this suggestion. No! Well, do you have a better idea? He snapped. But I just looked away, because I had nothing but misgivings. Brew, on the other hand, was genuinely moved by Tennyson's offer. You'd do that for me? And Tennyson said, with his typical smirk, Sure, what's a friend for if he can't take credit for punching you out? Brew took Tennyson up on his offer, and before lunch people were buzzing with the news that Tennyson had beaten him senseless. My friends came out to console and support me, calling Tennyson every name in the book. And in turn, Tennyson's friends supported him, giving him kudos and high fives that he had to accept or else risk tainting the credibility of Brew's story. Suddenly, Tennyson and I were at war with each other in the eyes of our classmates, but no one but Brew knew that it was all fake, a tricky, nasty subterfuge designed at throwing everyone off the track. I couldn't help but feel I'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. There were so many times during that awful day when I held my phone with 911 dialed in, ready to hit send, but in the end I didn't do it. I don't know how things would have been different if I had made that call. Maybe it might have saved Brew from what happened next. On the other hand, it was going to happen one way or another, no matter what any of us did.